get started, because we are here. My name is Oren. I'm the executive director of Commonweal, which is an organization and a retreat center in California, about an hour north of San Francisco. Also, a member of the Retreat Center Collaboration Stewardship Circle. And today we have a special guest, actually someone from our community, Stanley Wu, who's the director of the Resilience Project at Commonweal. Um, I'm sure he'll share some about his history and his narratives, but I've known Stan now for I don't know how many years. And every time there's a new chapter of, oh, you were a firefighter. Oh, you were in charge of all the geothermal operation in the Bush Retreat Center in Oregon. Oh, really? You lived in a squad in an army base in Holland. Oh, you're also a doctor of Chinese medicine. And it just keeps going. So I really can't think of anyone that has experience with land-based organizations as much as Stan is. Before we do that, I'd like to just kind of share our shared agreement and our values. Aaron, if you want to pop them up for a sec. After that, we will have a chance to um, do introductions that Stan can lead.
Not getting it. Not
I
showing
could
up
just
the
announce them.
screen. Okay, yeah, go ahead and I'll see if I can get them up on the
Yeah,
screen.
so our core values are what does RCC believe in? The power of place and space, the interplay of inner and outer work, and a commitment to universal flourishing. So RCC is a community of practice for retreat centers leaders and their allies across the US and Canada. And the agreements that we share for these calls are we speak from our own experience, that our voices and our stories, your voices and your stories are important. We're all knowers and learners in this space. Silence is okay. Moments of pause are okay. Silence can be centering. Movement and sound can also be. Keep other stories confidential so you can share what you learned, but not other stories. This is an invitational space, so participate as you're able. Hold discomfort with grace and deep listening. We are not here to fix or advise. And as Dr. Leticia Nieto says, choice is a small unit of liberation, which is a good starting place. Um, and with that, Stan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Oren. Thank you, Aaron. It's a real pleasure to be here with you all. How would everybody feel with just taking a quick moment of silence to land here? Um, please join me for just a moment. Peace. Thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all. As Oren said, my name is Stanley. I am a jack of many trades and a master of none, as they say. Um, though finding plumbing leaks on geothermal systems is actually a skill that I have. And I lead the Resilience Project at Commonweal, and I work with the polycrisis efforts out of Commonweal, which is looking kind of at how resilience manifests inside of complex systems and the global challenges. So consider me a resource. Please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to ask any questions. Um, I may not have the answers, but collectively, I actually think this group may. So I'm delighted to be a part of this community and this circle. And as Oren said, I lived at Brighton Bush for about 5 years and I think Oren and I share a very deep belief in the importance that retreat centers play in the United States and beyond. Retreat centers are land-based organizations embedded in their communities offering sanctuary, refuge, something deeper, slower, quieter, and beautiful um, that this world sorely needs in this hyper-connected, fast, disassociated world. So I come with this thesis that retreat centers have actually something really valuable to contribute to the world. And so I am a deep believer in the work that all of you are doing. And so I just want to put that on the center. But before I dive into what I have, I would like to bring everybody's voices into the room and hear where you all are from. So if we could go around, maybe introduce yourself, introduce your retreat center, introduce where you are, and then share one hope you have for this coming year. Um, and after that, all of that, if you can remember, maybe name one person that you see on the screen who hasn't gone and pass it along. I think that would be a really nice place for all of us to start. Does anybody have an interest in going first?
I'll be glad to jump in. I'm Sally Hare. I'm located on the coast of South Carolina, in the Myrtle Beach area, where we're very excitedly anticipating snow later today. And I am retreat centerless. So I thought I would start by saying that when I first became involved with the retreat center organization. In fact, to help to found it, I was involved with Kirkridge, but I've retired from that board and am no longer active there. But retreat centers have become even more important to me now that I am retreat centerless, because it's where I want to do my work. So I'm really happy to be here today. And as I said earlier to Oren, I was looking for a space today where I might see a glimmer of light, of hope, and I knew that it would be in this space.
Jeff Toronto, would you like to go next? Feel free to pass it along when you're done. And we can't hear you, but you're not muted, which is a funny situation.
Does it work now? We're good? Awesome. Thank you. We have these laptops where I can mute myself, like physically. It turns off. There's a key that turns off my mic. Sorry about that. I forgot about it. I work at Gilchrist Retreat Center with Kirsten. Kirsten is my boss here. And we're located in Three Rivers, Michigan. I grew up half an hour north of here and knew nothing about it. Until much later in my life. So retreat centers are, yeah, hidden gems for sure. The hope, you saw me looking wistfully off, thinking about what my hope would be. I went to an MLK Day thing at Western Michigan University yesterday, and I think my hope is continuing to see people younger than myself also feeling hopeful and trying to listen and collaborate with their ideas too. I think that answers all the prompts. So I will go with Pam Jacobson.
Hi, thanks. Good timing. I just quieted the distracting noise in the background. Thanks. I'm also retreat centerless, but more at the opening to wanting to be involved with retreat centers. I'm very drawn to this work. I'm very drawn to the core values of this particular group. I do nonprofit interim executive work. So I typically follow a founder and help organizations navigate through significant change and kind of pave the way for their next chapter. And I find that I work primarily in service organizations and folks that give so much of themselves on a daily basis and do very little to take care of themselves from the inside. And I work with organizations to align the same mission and the core values that they deliver to the public, to deliver it internally as well, to live their mission on the inside. And I do a lot of retreat work with these folks when I go into organizations as a way of setting the stage. And personally have benefited from a variety of different types of retreat settings for my own personal healing in between these gigs where we get exposed to some pretty significant trauma on a day-to-day basis. So I'm very, very drawn to this work. I'm hopeful to shift my career into making this my work, right? Whether it's through interim, but ideally more for long-term work. This is what I want to do. So that's my hope. I forgot the other prompt because I had a lot of background noise. Did we cover it? I
Hope
think
for this
so.
coming year.
For the coming year, yeah, I'd like to shift my work in. I just finished a gig. I've been kind of out of this scene for about a year because I was in an interim role that was very, very demanding. And it just needed my full attention. And I've transitioned out of that. That program is in Pasadena, and I'm really hoping that the hard work that we did over this time can be sustained because the community took quite a hit and quite a few staff members lost their homes. So they're in my prayers right now. They're in my thoughts. So I think that covers it. How about Lisa Downs?
Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Downs, the director for Nazareth Retreat Center, and I am in Kentucky. We're a mission of the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth. And so my hope for this coming year is just that I get more people involved in our retreats that we offer. I think that's always the hope. So that is me, and I will call on Sally. Sally, are you here? Oh, you've already gone, Sally.
I have. Yes.
So Nancy.
Thanks.
Hi, all. I think I've met a lot of you before. I'm Nancy Lee. I'm on the Retreat Center Collaborative Stewardship Circle. And yeah, formerly with Tatamagouche Center, a retreat center up in Mi'kma'ki, kind of northeast Canada. And I think my hope is some concrete ways that communities come together in terms of collective care. You know, how that support concretely happens at a collective level in different communities. Yeah. Thank you. And I will call in Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Wright, and I'm here in Hiawatha, Iowa, where it is cold and sunny, at Prairie Woods Franciscan Spirituality Center. Definitely a very land-centered organization. My hope for this coming year is that Prairie Woods really can offer safe space for diverse people, for diverse conversations, and for the bridge building that we need to do across difference. So I'll pass it to Rich.
Hi, I'm Rich. I'm from the Guest House Retreat and Conference Center in Chester, Connecticut. I'm the facilities director here. I guess I really hope that in the coming year that we can find ways to effectively support each other and our communities through what's surely going to be an extreme sea change, which from where I sit feels like sort of a orientation towards finding ways to expand our poverty crisis. Somehow we need to we've talked about this for a long time about sort of joining hands and becoming a force of some sort. And I feel like the time is now. Oh, and I am going to pass it to Kirsten.
Thanks, Rich, and thanks, everyone. I'm Kirsten Vandergiesen Reitzma, and I'm with Jeff here at Gilchrist Retreat Center in Three Rivers, Michigan, which is about halfway between Chicago and Detroit for some geographical context. I was involved in helping plan quite a few activities for MLK this past weekend, a march and a service, and we did a healing circle and documentary film showing. And I think that process was revealing to us places where new places we hadn't seen before, where the social fabric in our community is really frayed, where it was stronger before COVID. And now just feels really, I don't know, well, I guess frayed is still the word that's coming to mind. So I think a hope for this coming year is, I feel like we really need to get back to some basics in terms of the quality of relationships that support solidarity in our community. So just things like one-on-one conversations and more kinds of healing, listening, sharing circles, shared meals. We really need to rebuild some of that still, which, yeah, the past month or so has been really revealing about that. So that would be a hope that we can reweave some of those connections in the coming year. Let's see. I don't think we've heard from Bill yet.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bill. I am currently in West Hollywood, California, far enough away from the fires, luckily, but close enough to know plenty of people who've lost homes. I am representing, I'm the founder or co-founder of Big Bear Retreat Center in Big Bear, California, a couple hours from here in the mountains. And we do primarily meditation retreats, silent meditation retreats. That's kind of what we were founded to do, but we're in the sort of between those, we're trying to do a lot of other interesting stuff. Sometimes we're renting out to groups. We're offering different retreats for, people who are working in community-based organizations. I'm trying to organize a meeting of leaders in the homelessness space in Los Angeles to come up there for a couple days. And kind of that's maybe I'm hoping that something positive will come out of that, because it's a big problem in Los Angeles, and it may be just like one little positive thing that can help bring people together to work on problems. I just feel like people connect in a different way at retreat centers, over meals, over walks, hikes, whatever, and just to kind of be away from, to be in that kind of liminal space and connected to nature. And in general, for people to have those kinds of experiences there that are meaningful and sometimes even life-changing. And I don't know if I got all the prompts, but who hasn't gone? And there's some people who are not on camera, so I'm not sure that they want to share. Did anyone else, if you're on camera and you have not shared yet, can you raise your hand? Yeah, I wasn't sure. Claire, yes.
Thanks, Bill. Hi, everybody. My name is Claire Anderson, and I'm the executive director at Sienna Retreat Center, which is on the very icy shores of Lake Michigan, roughly between Chicago and Milwaukee. And although my personal background is I grew up in Southern California and in the Pasadena area, San Gabriel Valley. And so my heart is very much with the community there. But I've been here in Wisconsin happily for a couple decades now. My hope for the coming year is that if anyone is feeling isolated through our current events today, if anybody is feeling isolated socially or in any other way, that they somehow are able to make a connection with a group, a person, an entity to break down any feelings of isolation. I assume that Stanley, Oren, and Aaron, you also perhaps would be willing and interested in introducing yourselves. And also we have Lori, David, and Sarah. Was there a hand that I didn't see?
Hop
Maybe
on,
Dave?
Claire. Yeah.
Aaron? Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. I'm Erin McCauley. I'm the RCC admin assist. Here in very chilly, very snowy mid-Michigan. Kind of enjoying the cold weather, just for the chance to enjoy winter being winter. But also very glad I can do that from indoors, where I can stay warm. Yeah, my hope for this year, revolves a lot around connection, a lot around really tapping into creative activities, in connecting with others, connecting with the land. I really want to see people create and sink into their identities and claiming who they are without apology. Yeah, I'm hopeful for that, and I know seeing that in others will encourage me to do the same. So I'll be looking for it. And if anyone else would like to go, I invite you to pop on now and let us know who you are.
Hi there, I'm David MacDonald. I'm the director at the Osage Forest of Peace. We're located in Sand Springs in Northeast Oklahoma. And we are celebrating our 45th anniversary of our founding this year. We were founded as a monastery by the Benedictine Sisters of Perpetual Adoration. And since 2009, we've been an independent interfaith, interspiritual retreat center. My hope for 2025 is similar to what a lot of folks have said in that it centers around community. We are expanding our definition of community here to include not just the people who live here and work here, but also the people who visit, whether that be for an hour or for a weekend or a week. And also that community includes the animals, the plant life, the trees, all of the natural surroundings as well. And so I'm hopeful to be living into what that means in this next year.
Wonderful. Sarah, Lori, are you there and would like to jump in? Okay. I believe we got everybody. Is that right? Okay. Excuse me. How extraordinary. I actually didn't anticipate this with this prompt, but how strong of a thread there is between all of our common hopes here. And it shouldn't be surprising coming from retreat centers because I feel like at the heart, retreat centers are a place for people to connect with themselves, with each other, with the world, and how we support each other, how we engage with solidarity, how we provide safe space, how we build community, how we enhance collective care, all those things, are at the core of our work. And if I were to just take this a little bit step further, in the reflections that we've been doing on what resilience means and what this world needs in this moment, oftentimes comes back to reconnecting with ourselves and the people around us and the natural world. That enduring resilience is less about individual strength, but about our social networks and cohesion and collaboration. And it is that source that supports our inner and our outer resilience. And I just think it's remarkable how we are all, in some ways, thinking about the same thing. And I also think that that's what the unique offering retreat centers have to play. So this conversation was about opportunities and challenges for this coming year. And the goal is to have a conversation about resilience, how retreat centers can become more resilient, how you can foster your resilience, how you can think about resilience so that we can continue to be of service in this time. And so that's the goal for this conversation. And what I want to do is frame kind of this moment in a way, which I think is on everybody's mind, but in a lot of ways is a phase shift from where we have been the past few years, ecologically, politically, socially. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I was remembering a saying that one of our board members at Commonweal likes to bring up from time to time. And she says that the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, is to act with yesterday's knowledge. And that to recognize this moment that we're in all its truth is one of the most powerful things that we can do. Because then that gives us the agency to respond most wisely. And I think that we're moving into a world with greater uncertainty, quite frankly. Uncertainty about climate, uncertainty about immigrants working in our communities, about the costs of goods. We may see an end to electric vehicles funding, an end to DEI programs, cuts to federal school systems, see people's jobs replaced. There are a whole set of things that are going to be changing around us. And how do we kind of keep our eyes open to be able to sense for signals of change? So that way we can anticipate and change our behavior and change the way that we work to respond or in response to those changes around us. That is a core theme of resilience. You know, it also seems that the climate is changing all around us, hurricanes, wildfires. And one of the things that has helped me recently is to think about a new normal of emergency response, of constant emergency response, where federal funds may be withheld depending on what state you're in. We may see widespread disinformation about aid efforts. We may see more economic polarization and about emergency response. The funding landscape for nonprofits may change as well. And I think that all of those things, you know, have a pretty heavy reflection to them. And I think that they are potentially challenges that are coming. And at the same time, in this moment of uncertainty, there's also opportunities and ways for us to be of service, and for ways for us to find different alliances, to support communities, to seek funding that I think are not obvious right now, but I think could be helpful for us to reflect on. And so one of the things that we were thinking about doing is going into some breakout groups. I wonder if this group, Oren and Aaron, I wonder if this group is actually large enough where we don't need to go into breakout groups, or if anybody has any feelings. But the idea was to reflect on what challenges we see this coming year and what opportunities we see. And the reason why these questions would be good to bring into the center is because all of us, land-based retreat centers, and those of us seeking to be more engaged with retreat centers, will probably benefit from sharing and learning and hearing from one another. And so, Aaron or Oren, do you have any preference for doing that together here or in breakout groups?
I think
Anybody
doing a
else?
large group gets everybody's voices in.
The large group.
Yeah,
Okay, let's do
I'm
that.
prepped either way. Yeah.
Okay, let's stay in this large group and let's reflect on one challenge and opportunities that we see coming at us this year. Is there anybody that has Rich, was that a hand up or a repositioning? A repositioning perhaps. But if anybody has a reflection, we would love to hear. And perhaps we can leave it popcorn style. Claire?
So the reflection question is, where do we see the potential challenges? Where do we see potential resources to meet the challenges? Opportunities. A challenge and an opportunity. One challenge that has been in my mind has been, what is potential funding for nonprofits, given that proposed legislation that I think maybe went through, it was going to go before the Senate, and that was any nonprofit that was deemed to be a terrorist organization, which could be interpreted very, very broadly. That was the concern on the part of some. Could there be a potential challenge there to nonprofit funding if we do things like promote social justice and funding gets pulled? That, in my mind, could be a potential challenge. A potential opportunity is, we have seen word of mouth spread nicely since people have been coming back after the pandemic. I see another couple nods of heads around the call here that's maybe the case with you too. It took a while since so many of those book clubs and church groups and meditation groups and those social networks had such an interruption for a year or two or even 3 in some parts, that it's taken quite a while for those relationships and those networks to build back up. But fortunately, we're seeing those networks build back up, and word of mouth has started again, word of mouth about what we offer.
I think I would name the challenge and the opportunity as being almost the same thing. As we go into the future, and as people have increasingly separated from denominational life or haven't been involved in denominational life, I think spirituality centers have a unique opportunity to support the spirituality of people. And there's a convergence of science as well as our understanding of spirituality that supports that. For us as a Catholic retreat center, it places growing pressure on us to figure out how to step out in the world, honoring the legacy that founded us, but speaking the language of others. I think as a land-centered organization, we have this opportunity to invite people in unique ways, but it's complicated. And we're probably on a 10-year runway to independence. So, what does that all look like?
Leslie, could you say, forgive me for following up here, could you say a little bit more about the opportunities to invite people in unique ways? This is something that I think that you've been thinking about, obviously, and perhaps not, but I think that's of real interest to this group.
Well, so part of it is, so there's been a real shift in our culture and our attention here from more inside, internally focused. Whoever arrives, they become the center of our attention, to now understanding ourselves as part of a larger community and a resource to that larger community, whether it's in conversations like how might we be a resilience hub, to how are we the safe space for the elementary school 2 blocks away? And, also as we continue to learn about the language of spirituality that others speak, many of those languages are spoken here, but we haven't really made that explicit, particularly as it relates to land, as it relates to, the contemplative internal journey, and also that there's so many paths, sound, movement, etc. And, we have tended to talk in very denominational language with very denominational symbols. And there's an opportunity here to throw open, the arms of welcome. And what does that look like? How do we do that? And not in sort of, I get this image of, sort of the intense relative who wants to hug everyone. But, here we are, and we're here for you.
Beautiful.
If I could piggyback off of something in particular that you said, and that was really beautiful, and there were a lot of themes that were brought into what you just said. But the part about being a resource to the larger community, one of the challenges that I'm witnessing is this just pivot fatigue, and not just in retreat centers, but in nonprofits all over, right? It's a constant pivot fatigue. We're just tired of looking for new sources of revenue. We're tired of reinventing ourselves. We're tired of having to change with the times all the time. And community is such a wonderful antidote to that, right? To share our resources together. And when there are common themes across different retreat centers or within your community, and going back to this idea of to be a resource in the community, yes, and to allow the community to be a resource to us, right? To establish those partnerships because we're stronger together, and to be able to lean on one another. So often these, smaller nonprofits tend to want to do everything themselves because that's how it's always been done. And we don't necessarily have the muscle memory to build those partnerships with, different folks. I think Commonweal does a really exceptional job with that. And there's other places out there that I'm not necessarily familiar with at this point that are models for that, of collaborating with other organizations in their community and across the country. So pivot fatigue and collaboration.
Stan, when I think about kind of what are the challenges of this year, in some ways it's hard to step away from the physical. I mean, seeing the fires in Los Angeles, and before that, the fires in kind of like the Big Bear area, and then the fires here before, I'm wondering how our calling is changing. And then when you add on top of it kind of the larger subject of climate change, which is, places that we thought were safe, like the Hudson Valley had fires, and North Carolina had a terrible hurricane that I think it was a few community calls ago, we heard from the Southern Dharma Retreat Center about their efforts to engage their community. So I'm wondering what is our calling during these times. And then when you add the complexity of the socio-political, cultural, and economic situation of the country, so what are we beyond kind of providing places for restoration, which is enough? It is sufficient to provide a place for people to be quiet, is probably sufficient. I remember after the fires up here, people were looking for that place. They had two questions. One is, where can I breathe and what can I do? And that is what, and we ended up starting a distribution center for farmers in Sonoma County. and providing healing circles. But I wonder if maybe that's an opportunity for something among retreat centers to think about it, because I don't think any of us are going to be immune to what's going to be happening. And so it could be that the challenge is also the opportunity. I mean, especially those of us in areas that are, disaster prone. So if you're anywhere on the West Coast, from British Columbia down to Baja, there's the question about fire is not if, it's a question of when, and what is our calling to do during this time. And I think the opportunity is to really build a cohesion among us to do both the rest and restoration. I think there's so much that I wouldn't call Commonweal a secular retreat center, because there's definitely a strong spiritual bent to it, but it's definitely not affiliated with a religious organization. But the work that retreat centers like Siena and others have been doing for years, there's a lot to be learned about. How do you hold community in times of grief? And that feels to me like a real calling.
Bill? Thank you, Oren.
Thanks. So just I like what I'm hearing, and I like the idea of figuring out ways to collaborate, to think about what do we do when there are fires, and what is our unique role as retreat centers? I mean, we just happen to not have any programming right now in Big Bear, for a few weeks in the winter, and so we've offered the cabins to people to come up, and because it's basically built like the cabins are like three or four bedroom homes essentially. Not a lot of people are taking us up on it, but it's just one thing that we can do. We've got the space, but normally, I mean, that just happens to coincide with our downtime this year. But for our center, I mentioned I was a founder. We've been around for 6.5 years about, but really are just starting to have more and more programming, and we're kind of looking at structures. Like we haven't even we're not set up as a nonprofit, although we're very definitely not profitable. But is it time to think about a different structure that would allow more ease to get other resources? And how do you do that, but still maintain control? Not that I'm that much of a control freak, but I have a vision, and I don't want to just, I've invested a lot and I want to, or do we need, also thinking about having more of like an executive director, which we really have not had up till now. So a lot of that, but that's both challenges and opportunities mixed up together for us. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to also, I know we were planning on hosting the Western Regional retreat, but fires. Yeah. I mean, we never were, we were in an evacuation warning at some point, but never an evacuation order, but still it was close enough. The air wasn't good. And ironically, during the fires in LA, I've been wanting to spend more time in Big Bear to be up in where it feels safer from the fires currently. So I've been spent most of the last couple of weeks up there. So yeah. So that's, I mean, it's really like thinking about what's next for us. Like we're sort of be scrappy. A few of us just kind of put it together, and we started having retreats, and we would just bring up people who, to do stuff for each retreat. And now that we're more having, except for right now, we have a pretty busy schedule starting in mid-February. And, now we have a big staff, and then there's HR issues and all of that. And so trying to work it out. And my co-founder and I are, not there on the ground most of the time. So really thinking more about maybe having someone, because we don't have one person overseeing everything right now. We have program director, we have operations director, but anyway. And it's okay, but it's not ideal, I think. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other reflections? Jeff, you were looking wistfully off out the window again.
Yeah, I've got some things I've been thinking about. I hesitate um just because I'm feeling self-conscious. But one of my latest ones that came up, especially in disaster-prone areas, I'm wondering if people are concerned about what insurance looks like. Like after a disaster happens, will they be able to be reinsured? Or will the insurance cover a rebuilding? Is that something that people are interested in? So that I had to start with.
I think one thing I'm noticing, there's a bit of deja vu, of course, right now, with 8 years ago. We're going through some of the same motions, but it feels different. And I think one thing that feels really different is that 8 years ago, people felt really motivated and energized, and like it just, there was a spark and people came together. And now people just seem tired. They seem overwhelmed. They feel like whatever energy they were able to muster is gone. Just, my observation from our local level here in a rural city in Southwest Michigan is we're not seeing the same people showing up. COVID kind of demonstrated you could stay home and still stay somewhat connected to people. You didn't have to get out in person. And I think that's going to continue to be a challenge this year. But I think there's also opportunity in it, in the sense that as a retreat center that is focused on rest and reconnection and resourcing, I need to be kind of extending my search for where the pilot lights are still lit, to figure out where is that energy sort of primed to coalesce again in this life-giving, connecting way, and how do we as Gilchrist Retreat Center, which can kind of, as a retreat center that is supported by a private foundation, we can just kind of like sit out here on our 67 acres and continue to let people come to us through word of mouth. But how are we going to kind of grow the mycelial network further and deeper into the community, and find those places where there's life and there's energy and there's beauty that is longing to be nurtured, and kind of like built into this network of giving and receiving and gift economy. So I think that's, I think it was Leslie who said the challenge and the opportunity are kind of sides of the same thing. That's kind of what I'm feeling right now, is how do we really lean into the local community as our fractal of what's possible. Because I really do believe in, I think my personal theory of change is around experience, powerful experiences that open up people's imaginations, to have a greater sense of what's possible than they did 1 minute ago, a day ago, a week ago, a year ago. And I think retreat centers can be hubs for that.
Might piggyback you, Kirsten. I was going to say the challenge was a little bit, I think, the divisiveness and despair that feels really palpable, and even more so than when we were in the thick of COVID somehow, miraculously. And when I think of the antidotes in my own community, one of them is some of the young, I've talked about this before in these calls and certainly in RCC, but some of the young queer world building role playing games, for example. But the other opportunity that I feel is really, I don't know, connected to that, whenever I've stayed, it's residencies, and especially for young people. When I've stayed at places like Upaya, for a length of time, I was their staff. I'm looking at the possibility of staying at Coromila for a couple of months because I want the experience of being on the land in community. And I feel like that is, some retreat centers are doing that exceptionally well. And most of us, I can say at Tatamagouche Center, we just couldn't crack the nut. But I feel like it is one of those beautiful sweet spots where, especially again, a young person having some time for real rest and retreat coincides with the center's need for a mass of energy and influx of new imagination. And I used role-playing games as just one example, but that kind of like what you talked about, Kirsten, that community in action, living together, especially on the land. I feel like it's a really important opportunity, especially being safe hubs, or we call them, like resilience hubs, whatever you want to call places. Anyway, and the retreats, just seasonal retreats where you're bringing in people for periods of time too, for that kind of, repair work or readiness work. Anyway, yeah, I think they are flip sides, the opportunities and the challenge.
Yeah, again, bouncing off of Nancy's bouncing off. I think for us, we do have a residential community here. There's four of us that live on the land here together, and we have established as a community what our touchstones are. There's eight principles that are really important for us, and a lot of them come back to how we can be authentic with each other in community. Because I think what's happened in society writ large is that we have created a culture where we don't talk about certain things. I don't remember who it was who said it, but somebody said for many years we said we don't talk about religion and we don't talk about politics. And what we've done is we've created generations of people who don't know how to talk about the things that they might disagree about. And instead of creating peace, we've created this tension that you can palpably feel especially when somebody comes to a retreat center for the first time. There's sort of this feeling out period of like, are they going to say the right code words? Are they on the right side or the right camp? And what I think the opportunity that's arising in my heart out of that challenge is building a common language for discussing these really important issues in ways that don't force us to take sides, or that recognize the nuance in the arguments that are being made in society. I think that when we talk about things like climate change, or we talk about the political environment, you pick a topic, there's very little room for nuance anymore. And I think what I'm learning from living in community, because I've only been at this community for the last year, is that we just have to be able to be vulnerable and open with each other. And that takes a lot of time of getting to know each other and learning to trust one another so that we can say things like, I feel hurt. and this is why. I am really excited, and this is why. Like all of those kinds of things need to be able to be expressed. And how do we hold the sacred space for people to be able to do that? Um, yeah, I just to me, I think there's a lot of hard work to be done, but it's a lot of good work to be done in the coming years as well as we think about how do we create a common language for expressing these very deeply felt and deeply held beliefs, and still love one another through that, even if we might vehemently disagree when it comes to certain things.
I think that's so important. And really to what a lot of people are saying here, David. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more, maybe about a way or a system or something that you've done that has helped contribute to building authentic community or help building towards authentic languages. Is it with your staff? Is it with your more insular community? Is it more geographic?
Yeah, I mean, yes, all of those things, I think. But I think it starts with those of us who are sort of at the core. You know, we have this monastic history, and so what we've recognized is we're not a monastic community anymore, but we are an intentional community. And so, what does that mean? And so, it means things like um, we commit to things like nonviolent communication. That's a really important touchstone for us, and we talk about it a lot so that we're mindful of the words that we're using so that our words themselves aren't causing harm, and that we are not relying on the, well, that's not what I meant argument, that we really try to think before we speak. And also a very open and honest posture, which I think takes a certain level of trust and also kind of person to be able to live into that, to say, this is how I truly feel. And for other people to be able to listen to that and take it in a non-judgmental way. So that one of the things that happens here is we'll say, um, all right, let's clear the air. Let's talk about the thing that's really the thing instead of talking around it, because we talk around things sometimes and we say, oh, the problem is that nobody's taking out the trash. But that's not really, I mean, the underlying issue is that there is an expectation of what it means to be in community. And we have a difference of expectation. And when that occurs, it shows in things like somebody's not taking out the trash, that kind of thing. And so it's really about creating the space and the time. And so, like, for us, it's really important as well that we have time as a community, and that's our staff, our resident community, anybody else who's really like our board, anybody else who's really important to the community, to take some time to be together as well. So we try to do things like have celebrations when there's a big celebration to be had, or having our own retreats. One of my colleagues and fellow residents here says, we have to remember that the retreat, the forest is for us too. It's not just for the people that we welcome here. And then the last thing I would say is we're by no means perfect on this, so I'm just offering our experience, but we have a theory here about mutual hospitality in which we believe that everyone is simultaneously guest and host at the same time. And that when we only act as a host, then we can become sort of passive aggressive and really possessive about the space. And we start putting up things like notes, like you can't go here, you can't do this, the coffee has to be made this way, kind of thing. Um, and when we only act as guest, we can become entitled, like I deserve this. This is for me. Serve me, kind of thing. But it's when we recognize that, yes, we are the hosts because people are coming here and we're the ones who live here. But at the same time, they're welcoming us into their psychic space. For however long they're here, we are also their guests. And so that's really humbling. Like when you start to think about that, you get a really difficult guest that's hard to deal with. You ask yourself the question, man, how am I being a guest to them as well as a host? And that'll bring you down pretty quickly to the right space where you can begin to think clearly.
Beautiful.
Does that leave me? Um, thinking about this couple, I feel like there's a lot of challenges, but I think the one that I'm landing on mostly is I think we're coming into a period where the the landscape, the way of managing us is to throw constant, endless diversions at us to the point where we stop paying attention to what's going on, and we start feeling powerless and divided and conquered. And this that definitely the antidote to that, the opportunity is to be aware, to be alert, to be responsive, to share information so that when we are all tired, we've all been tired since COVID, maybe, but we still have to, like, I guess the current administration is going to require us to become tone deaf to what goes on, these constant spitballs that keep coming out. Our opportunity here is to continue to pay attention and to be vocal and to speak as a united community, although in spite of any attempts to try to divide us into smaller, manageable subsets.
Sounds like there's some very alive questions about how retreat centers invite people in and hold space for authentic relationships. And I've heard a couple of things that I just kind of want to throw out there. A lot of excellent questions, and a lot of excellent opportunities. How, when there is a natural disaster around us, could we be of service to people in need? And a question for all of you is, what kind of infrastructure does that mean? Does that mean extra water? Does that mean extra blankets? Does that mean extra food? Does that mean, being in touch with your staff to be responsive and adaptable quickly when an emergency comes through? Or perhaps with your communications staff to be able to put the notice out that your retreat center is open and available to host people. What does that infrastructure look like for those people that need it? How can retreat centers, like Rich was saying, rise above the fray and allow ourselves to not get caught in distractions and small things, but take this higher road that I think is at the core of many of these retreat centers, and of compassion, of love, of kindness? And how can we open that offering in a time when divisiveness and anger and so many of those things are alive in our communities? What is the opportunity there for retreat centers to host those conversations, to host that space, and to host those conversations? It may not be easy, for sure. I'm not saying it is, but I think those are worthy questions for this moment. And I think that retreat centers are in a unique position to be of service there as well. Many, many other things like that I could summarize, but I'll leave it there. There's just any other reflections and thoughts that people would like to get out? Community touchstones.
I would say that one of the very simple and effective things that I feel like we've done at Gilchrist, inspired by these conversations that we've been having as the RCC, is to make a connection with our county emergency manager. We didn't have that relationship at all before. And just by reaching out and giving her a tour, I think it was in late spring, early summer, we've gotten connected to all of these different resources and just a totally different perspective than is represented on our team. And on Thursday of this week, actually, we're going to be doing an emergency management training that she offers just for free to any organization or business in the county as part of her job. And she's tailoring it to our neighborhood retreat centers. We have several other contemplative communities here. And it's weaving the relationships among the retreat centers. It's growing our imagination about some of the simple things that we can do, whether we're well-resourced or not. And helping us think about what we can do together to be better at what we do every day, but also to be more prepared for the things we can't predict in the future. COVID kind of showed us the gap between our intentions and what was possible in reality. And I find myself wishing I could just, write a 2-page bullet point plan and make it happen by next week. But I'm realizing through this practice that it's all based on relationship building, and that takes time. And so I'm just so glad I made that call and set up that tour with her, because it's not an annual seed that we planted, it's a perennial, and it's going to take a while, but it's finally germinated and it's finally starting to grow. So yeah, thank you to all of the people on this call who kind of played a part in inspiring us to do that. And I'll keep you posted on how it unfolds.
Thanks so much for sharing. One of the things that I think most retreat centers can do is just that. Reach out, have relationships with your local fire department, local disaster councils, emergency response community. They're people that are on the front lines that need retreats and support themselves, but are also tied into local kind of plans for how to respond in emergencies. And knowing that you are there, having a line of communication open is a profoundly important thing to do, especially if your retreat center is able to offer beds or offer space or offer rooms. In fact, at Commonweal, we've actually been in touch with the Bolinas Fire Department. They have based where we are, if a major earthquake hits or a fire, they would evacuate people. And so we're helping to plug in to their plans. We're planning to have batteries and food and water, and to be able to support a certain number of people if they need it in a response. And I think that is a very practical, very real on the ground thing that you can start to do. Have those relationships. Doesn't require infrastructure build out, but that's a really, really powerful place to start. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kirsten, for sharing. I also want to mention too, this residence for young people came up. Residence for people that are burned out. Residence for queer. Residence for people, for underserved communities has come up in this conversation. And it seems like to me that there could be an opportunity there if you pair it with the challenge of how do we invite people in? Who are those people in your communities? Who are those people that you're in touch with? I wonder if actually a few conversations with some local leaders in your area. I wonder if people that come in, questions about how retreat centers could be of service to those communities could open up avenues to support them and bring people in that we may not have thought of originally. So also like piggybacking on this idea of relationship building, extending community, having authentic relationships, asking questions, I think could open up a lot of doors too that are unexpected. So that was a piece of wisdom I will take away from this.
If I could just mention, to your point, when COVID was starting to explode here, we were able to make a connection with our local fire marshal, who we share a good relationship with. And, we never really even thought about the fact that we thought about people with COVID, and maybe that wouldn't be a good match for our center. Maybe we're not set up for that. But what we didn't think of, and the fire marshal did, it was actually his ask was, we're going to have doctors and nurses that need a clean place to go after putting in a shift. You have 48 bedrooms. Can we put you on our list? the answers may not always be apparent, but the need is always there. And so, I mean, that's a role we never expected to take on, but of course we're proud and excited to have that opportunity. So, you know, sometimes the answer comes to you, and sometimes it's not what you thought it would be. But that was uh, that was an interesting concept that we never really thought of. We thought about the fact that we had all these empty beds sitting here, but we just didn't think we were the right place to take care of sick people. But come to find out, that wasn't the need. They don't need a place for sick people. They need a place to keep providers from becoming sick. So you never really know sometimes where it's going to come from.
Rich, could you say a little bit more about how that connection happened? Did you reach out to the local medical community? Did they reach out to you? How did that get squared?
Actually, in this particular case, when I got here 10 years ago, we did not have a good relationship with the fire marshal's office. It was pretty bad. So I made it a point to repair that and let him know that we're here to do things right. And I think from his impressions, having worked with us as we were going through that repair process, I think we just maybe came to mind for him as a good location. You know, plus he's through here to do inspections and whatnot anyway, so he sees what we're about and he knows our intentions are good. So I think he kind of took it upon himself to approach us, if I recall that the right way.
I'd love to ask you, Stanley, if you might just share a little bit about what you know about resilience. That's part of what drew me to this call, my own thinking about that, work with that in the last decade, and my fascination with the etymology of words and learning that resilience comes from the Latin word resilio, meaning to jump back. And when I explore that within climate change, I jump back into how separated we've gotten from the fact that we are nature and how that disconnectedness may be at the root of so much of what's happened. But I just welcome if you would share a little bit about your own learning observations in that area.
Appreciate the question. I'd be happy to. But before I dive in, was there any other burning shares, thoughts, reflections on this conversation?
I just want to speak so that I have practice for the next time, because this is, I was a little intimidated and I'm normally not, but I'm in Pennsylvania and here it's about 4 below zero. And speaking to, crisis and responding to it, we have an RCC, but it's called a Recovery Community Center. And we try to be respite for people. And we had 24 families here without heat for over a month, with children and babies and all that. And this is as the wildfires were raging. And it wasn't until the news highlighted it that we became aware, and some of our own participants, fellow humans, were impacted. And we just felt in the moment, because that's how we live, that we had to do something. We put out a post, and within 24 hours, we had all needs met. And we also took a whole group of us to that area. It's a very impoverished area, and the people were invisible, heard. And so we had to stand in the gap for them, be their voice, right? But the shame that they had around not having heat, which stopped them from even expressing it to us, broke my heart. And we do embrace the Ubuntu way. So I am because we are, and you and the whole community, we just feel like we belong. This relationship building, we don't feel it as necessary because it already exists. And so we conduct ourselves in that way. And I guess it's the energy people reciprocate. And so we believe we are the medicine. And so anyway, it was quite, community is a powerful mechanism. Community is a powerful mechanism. And I do believe, to my sister's point who asked about resilience, that there is a time for expansion and contraction. And so sometimes I think you got to pull it in, sometimes you pull it out, and you just go with the ebbs and flows. So I just wanted to introduce myself. I like being in the space with like-minded and like-spirited people, and just wanted to practice some bravery. So thank you for allowing me in the space.
Thank you so much for your contributions. I think that's actually important for all of us to take seriously. That providing the space, non-judgmental, open, and compassionate, may allow things to emerge that people were afraid to share. And I think that's at the core of a lot of the spiritual work that grounds retreat centers. So thank you. Any other comments?
I had a quick one, real quick. Speaking about young people and people being burnt out, I wonder if there would be a way to invite even younger people to retreat centers, since land and nature seems to be something to offer. And often there's science classes. That was something I did at a past job, was kind of set up as a county government person, going outside with classes of young people to do science stuff. And since we have land here, that could be an opportunity to invite even younger people to see the space, be here under a pretense of learning about the land, and then introducing what a retreat center is and what retreat is. And then as they grow up, eventually they might remember us. Because like I said, I'd never heard about this place when I was a kid. And I think that's unfortunate. Maybe we could make that happen somehow.
Beautiful. So I have about 5 minutes before I have to hand this over, and happy to offer a few reflections on resilience. And I'm going to start with a very theoretical level, and I'm going to then hopefully ground it in something more pragmatic for all of you to think about. But first of all, resilience in and of itself is not necessarily like an a priori good. There's no abstract idea that resilience is great and thing that this will, that's the thing to shoot for. Capitalism is resilient, terrorist cells are resilient, all sorts of things. White supremacy is resilience. And so I think it's important for us to just put that aside for the moment. Resiliency doesn't always mean good. Resiliency is also not something like sustainability that you kind of achieve and then you're done. Resilience is kind of a continuous state that needs to be kind of refreshed, reiterated, and brought in. It's not a state that you achieve and you're done, right? There are four basic principles of resilient individuals and resilient systems and organizations. And I think these principles are really helpful for retreat centers to reflect on, because I think they apply to each of our functions and the way that we are in the world. The first is this idea of regeneration. What are the slow moving things that contribute to the well-being of the overall system, right? Your health, your relationships, trust, education, those things that take time, but that support the overall thing in and of itself. That's so important. Regeneration is the first. Second is learning. How do you sense for signals of change? How do you sense change around you? How do you sense disruption? How do you kind of anticipate when things are going to change, and how can you be ready to respond to them? And not only sense, but pair that with the decision-making centers of the individual or the organization. So to be able to sense and act, huge core piece of resilience. The third is this idea of preparation. It's not the best word, but what are the material and social stuff that you need around you to be able to respond? You know, is it a little extra food to get you through the winter? You know, is it social networks to be able to lean back onto when you're alone, or you as yourself are feeling alone and isolated? What are kind of the stuff that is nice to have around you that will increase your adaptive capacity? You know, that's another huge thing. And then the fourth principle is, how do we know when something is meant to not be resilient? How do we let something fail with grace? How do we allow something to be loosely coupled from the whole, where it can not take everything else down with it when its time is to go? I think for example, the LA fires and building homes and urban wildlife interfaces is a tough, tough, tough conversation, but maybe something that we need to look at carefully, thinking about where we're going to build in the future for climate homes. You know, when do we allow things to kind of pass by? So I think those are four principles that are valuable to reflect on inside of your context. And I also just want to say that there are no islands of resilience. There's this very romantic idea that if you store enough beans, you know, and you like get the shutters and you got your batteries, like, you know, you're going to be good. And especially if you got thick cement doors that you can lock, you know, with cameras and guns, then you can keep everybody. I mean, there is something to that. But research, time and time and time again, shows that it's people and organizations that are connected, that are networked, that are integrated with other organizations and networks and resources that are the most resilient. It's that connection that I heard at the beginning of this conversation about relationships, community, authenticity, like that provide the good stuff in life. And then just to add one more thing here, I also don't believe that resilience is just responding to, like, how are we going to weather this storm? How are we going to manage this next thing that happens to us? You know, that's fine and all, but I feel like resilience also looks forward. It contributes to the world that we want to move into. It contributes to a healthy, green, just, more beautiful. You know, it's not just against the bad things. And I actually think those two things come together in a really nice way, because we know that if you get, you know, if you decarbonize, if you get batteries and you get solar, that, you know, reduces your carbon footprint. It goes both directions. Tool lending libraries, social infrastructure, relationships, mutual aid, all of those things will help you weather the storm and at the same time contribute to the future that you would like to live in. So I have accomplished that in 5 minutes. I could go on, but we'll leave it there. But again, just last point before I hand it back to Oren and Aaron. If you could take those principles of resilience and apply it to yourself and apply it to your organization and create something tangible of it, that's the value of it. It's not just a theoretical exercise, but these things have real world impacts and may even help guide us when we don't know what to do in times of uncertainty and difficulty. So I offer that as a high level summary, Sally, and I hope that's what you were looking for. Thank you. Aaron, Oren?
Thank you, Stan. Perfect. Aaron, what's coming up in the next few weeks?
Yeah, we've shifted the RCC community call schedule to adapt our resilience at the org to one community call a month. So next month we'll have a community call on February 18th, and that call will be a racial healing workshop. So I'll post a quick link. We don't have details for it yet, but you can look for those in our upcoming newsletter, which will be coming out on February 4th. So keep an eye out for those things. And if you're not signed up to our newsletter, let me pop the link for that in the chat as well. So you can get all the reminders and all the links that you need.
Great, thank you, Aaron. And thank you, Stan, for this conversation. And we've held these conversations before and we'll keep holding them. They could be the pragmatic side of me, but I'm wondering if we can figure out a way to share some of the learnings that have come from kind of Kirsten's stories and Rich's story about how they connected with their local communities, emergency services, fire departments. What do community efforts look like on a regional base? I was writing a newsletter today, and it opens with the line from Meg Wheatley that whatever the problem is, the community is the solution. And if anything manifests communities, it's retreat centers. So maybe sharing some of those learnings might be a way to think about our resilience. And if there is interest in healing circles, which is a program that grew during the pandemic, just kind of as a circle space to just be in the presence of other people, not trying to fix or advise others, but just in the space of healing. If there's an interest among retreat center directors, we could probably organize that. So let me know, or Kirsten or Nancy or Aaron. We're all part of the stewardship circle, but I'd be happy to organize a healing circle that maybe meets once a month, just as we deal with the realities of this planet. Resilience can be physical and can also be personal. And I think with that, I mean, unless Kirsten or Nancy have anything they want to add. Nope, they're saying no. Well, deep gratitude. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Aaron. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you all for coming and joining and sharing and participating. I feel like this is resilience in action, learning from each other. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you all.
Thanks, everyone. Stay well.